Thank you for joining us. This is Live with Miami's Community News, and I'm Michael Miller. We have two very special guests today. As you can see, this is Rabbi Ari Werbler and his wife, Devorah. Thank you both for being here. We have Rosh Hashanah is coming up pretty soon, so it's in a couple of weeks. Yeah. So let's talk about first that holiday, and then we're going to move on to you personally. So let's talk about the event of Rosh Hashanah, what it means, and how people and why people should be involved in it.
So it's interesting, Rosh Hashanah many times is translated as the new year, but Rosh actually means head. So just like the head conducts the body, the beginning of the year conducts how our year can go. And we want to steer it in the right direction, just like the mind guides our hearts. We've looked for these moments to kind of tap in to what is the center of our lives, the things that are important, the things that are valuable to us, and really express that meaning in our day-to-day life so that could carry through the year to come.
Devorah, why don't you add to this?
I mean, he just did a beautiful job there. But Rosh Hashanah to me is really a time of an ingathering for myself and for my family and for the community to really feel connection, feel connected to ourselves and our mission in the world and to the people, to Jewish people. And it's really a meaningful time to spend together.
So what is it like when you're actively in the Rosh Hashanah dinner that's there, and you realize that your forefathers, as far back as time, were doing the same thing? What does that mean to you?
So what we call that is a Masorah. Masorah means a tradition passed down from generation to generation, and you know, every family has their traditions, right? Like in my house, maybe it'd be don't touch the thermometer, you know, that's up to her. But when you see traditions that have carried people through generations, it's an empowerment. It's a great sense of strength and joy in knowing that what we're doing now is relevant, each one of us, and adding to that picture of all time. You know, we're not alone in this. We've never been alone in this. And going forward in the future, we have that strength as well.
As I'm just on my Jewishness discovery and journey, my wife and I went to Royal Park a couple of years ago. And I said, you know, my relatives were here. They were one of these people, all right, back, all right? It was so meaningful for me. Mm-hmm. And while I was there, we went into I don't want to call it a bookstore, but it was all Jewish stuff in the store. Mm-hmm. I stood in the middle of the store and started bawling, out of control, because it was so overwhelming to be where my great-grandfather was, I'm sure, all right? And it was really quite a journey that my wife has been holding my hand and taking me through. So we found out recently, well, I knew, but it didn't quite sink in, that my grandfather is Ukrainian Jew, and he changed his name, or whoever they was, from Mendelovich to Miller. Mm-hmm. So my wife says, you know what? You should take that name. You should bring it back, right?
Go to your roots.
So, and let's talk about your journey. You came from New Jersey, and we won't hold that against you, right? And so, tell us about your experience there, and then you came to you were in the Miami area for a while. Yeah. And when did you say, you know, I think I want to do this rabbi thing?
Well, first of all, you just connecting this to your last question. You've obviously done this before. That I remember my grandfather taking me by the hand in synagogue, and the sense of strength. He was a survivor of the Holocaust, and he had this strength to him that, you know, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and he lived that way with joy too. So in my journey, that always had a really strong impact on me and my parents' sense of positivity after coming from a generation that dealt with so much, you know, destruction, and that now we can build that here in America with a sense of pride. We can march with a sense of being true to who we are, and a sense of that we actually have a message for the world. With Rosh Hashanah is really about that we're all connected to this in this big scheme of creation. So coming from New Jersey, I had this feeling inside me always, you know, and I came here and I completed a master's in marriage and family therapy as well as my rabbinical degree, but I didn't necessarily go down that path. My wife is from Chicago, and we spent most of our married life until the last couple of months there in Chicago, and I actually worked in manufacturing. And as we were spending time in the community there, we saw that our impact could be greater. and Rabbi Mendy Felix here, who is he helps with the graduate students at the University of Miami, and I were friends, and we were speaking about something in northern Miami, somebody I was in contact with, and he said, there's this area here west of Coral Gables, Sunset, Westwood Lakes, where we're living now, and Kendall Lakes, Kendall West, which not much of an infrastructure, but a fair amount of Jewish community, as well as a community in general that is looking for perhaps a chance to connect more. And we say everything is divine providence. That's how it came about.
So, Devorah, what was it like for you when your husband says, at some point he must have brought it up, and you said you want to move out of Chicago area and come down to Miami, all right, where you had studied, all right, and we want to move into a non-traditional area for Jews, except for 30 years ago, and we're going to need to set up shop here and move.
Right.
You have two children or three? Three children, right?
Away from my family, away from friends, away from the community I knew for a very long time. It was a big, at first it was a big no. At first it was, I can't imagine something like this. And I put the brakes on, but I knew how important this was, not just to Ari, but to, I think, our family and our relationship. And when we're true to our soul mission, then everything will follow in a positive way.
And so
it took me time.
Yeah. So and was the idea always we're going to start a Chabad of Southwest Miami? That's the name of it. But when you came, that's the goal. That's the mission. We want to open a Chabad. Was that it?
I think the idea of Chabad of Southwest Miami was basically given to us, not from us, so to say. I think it's almost like actually the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, who was the founder of the Hasidic way of thinking, is that when somebody is attracted to a certain area, a piece of land, a piece of food, a piece of pizza, whatever it might be, there's something in that physical place, that physical thing, that draws the person to do it. So we had a vision, we had this, like my wife said, like this soul calling always to be giving more, to be connected more. We were doing lots in the Chicago community already, but there was obviously something greater for us. And then in my conversations with Rabbi Felix, it was like, let's see if this is probably maybe the place for your soul to land. And actually, it's Mr. Miller who has helped do that as well by being in contact with us.
My son-in-law participated in that one of those conversations, and I do want to thank him for connecting us. So for you, it seems to be you're full of passion and compassion, and you struggle to get where you are today. It's apparent that you said, I'm not sure if I want to do that, but we've got this bigger picture. When did the bigger picture become really important to you?
I mean, the bigger picture was always present, but I had to really address my fears and address what was holding me back. And I really had to be honest with myself. Was it really something that needed to hold me back, or was it, little, things that I can get over? And ultimately we discussed all of them and really discussed how we would deal with each situation if it came up, and how we would handle being in a community where maybe my kids don't have friends right away, in a different environment. And so there came a point where I was just like, this is actually really going to be amazing. This is going to be amazing for our family.
The transition from what to know to maybe to doing it, I think that journey is an important journey to be able to share, because there are people out there that are wondering about any changes that they should make.
Right.
So what were two of the things that were so important to you and dealing with, things that were holding you back that you had to answer and sort of deal with? What were some of those things?
It's a good question. Definitely, well, just having my children have the right schooling, and I guess just, I'm trying to remember what the fears were that I had to overcome, but it was mostly dealing with my family, I would say, leaving my family, my parents, my sister, my brother, and my bubby, and journeying in a whole new way, and just letting go, really letting go of what exactly has to happen and how, and allowing God to really kind of guide us and take us step by step if we have a real calling.
You know, there's some little girl, little boy that's listening to you right now talking about that here's this grown up, all right, that was having these challenges. That's sort of like me, all right? And to see you get on the other side of that, I know that's encouraging to so many people.
Riding the wave. But one thing that in the back of my mind did give me a lot of inspiration was our foremother and forefather, Abraham and Sarah. And that's basically what they did. They had a calling. God said, go from your father's place, go from the land that you know to the land I will show you. And they actually set up shop in the desert, and they were meeting people, passerbyers, and they were giving them food and drink and sharing the knowledge of God. And I just feel like that's over 3,000 years ago, but we're still doing it. We're still the light and sharing that. And I have that in my mind of how to keep going and how important that is.
That's terrific. Thank you for sharing that. So here are the two of you coming to Southwest from Miller, right? And you've been walking into stores, right? And going to places and just introducing yourself. Do I have that right?
Sometimes. Yeah.
It takes real guts to be able to do that. Most of us just live our lives. We go do our stuff. But you made that part of who you are because you recognize that that's what part of the thing you're going to do to grow. And as you're putting together the people with Chabad, no, it's not Chabad, it's the people that are there that make that happen. Tell us about some of the core values that you want to share with people when they become involved with you and Chabad.
Well, I think that example that you just gave of me walking into random places, it's funny that I've made it, so to say, a core part of who I am, and maybe that is something it takes some guts to do. And at the same time, I could be very nervous in coming to do an interview today. So we all have our different, and as my wife was so beautifully sharing, our different fears and things that we move past to grow. And I think one of the messages of Chabad and doing that in community, and what puts you out there in such a degree, whether it's on an interview or coming to somebody's home, is that there is a sense of connection. Like the word mitzvah, we often translate as commandment, meaning people know traditionally, or a good deed, but it comes from the word tzavtza, which means to connect. So what always drives me, and I think it's always driven me in my pursuits and learning and meeting people, is that we're all connected. And I was just speaking to a friend, and something that my father told me, right? The aspen trees in Colorado are all connected in their source, in their root. And the idea that we can see that and bring that to the surface, so to say, our roots to the surface, is always something that's driving me, is that each one of us has this very relevant connection to our tradition, and really the whole world. We spoke about Rosh Hashanah. It's not just a new year for the Jewish people. It's the idea of renewing our commitment as a human race to mutual respect, to what the call of the shofar is that this underneath, without all the fancy musical sounds, there's this simple call of the soul and a simple recognition and sincerity of a person. So that always drives me, and I think that's what Chabad has to offer too. Chabad actually means Chachma Bina Das, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. It's that you personally, and very relevant, not only relevant, but something that we could each share with others as well. We have each our own light to share. And that's what community is about. That's what we're here to do, whether it's a Shabbos meal, like my wife said, a meal in the physical sense, or the psychological and the physical and the emotional, and all levels, is to be able to connect and feel a warm and home to do that in.
So one of the things that we frequently hear, behind every successful man, there's a woman. Now, the woman's out front, and we know that, all right? Especially as you get a little bit older. No, they're out front. So what is your role in Chabad, and how do you integrate all that into your relationship with the members and with God and with your children and the community?
Yeah, a lot of pieces. But I would say that my husband and I are really co-working together on all projects and sharing. If I'm wanting to do something or seeing a need, I'm going to share it with him. We're going to build it up. If he's doing something, I'm going to help him build it up. And I see myself as the engine a little bit. I'm in the boiler room of the kitchen or with the kids or doing an errand, but I'm really in the boiler room, whether it's creating ideas, a plan, a flyer, creating how Rosh Hashanah should look, the details, taking care of my kids like everybody else does, but always having a deeper process in doing it, because I know I'm also serving the community. So
that's terrific. And how did you meet?
Via some mutual friends.
I picked her up in a neon rent-a-car, and she thought it was a clown car. It was a mutual friend's wedding, was a kind of an excuse to meet. And I had my car towed on our first date. And I always said...
For real?
For real.
Yeah, we were in
For
New
real.
York, and it was going really well in Manhattan. It's, the times changed for when you could park in different places. So I came back to my car after it was a wonderful afternoon, and it wasn't there. So she ran into a coffee shop. She said, where do they tow the cars here in New York, And I always say, I thought how resourceful she was. And my friends would say to me, yeah, what did she think of you? She was really resourceful in finding out where the car was, but I got our car towed on the first date. But I guess it led to more sense of trust and commitment on both ends that we're here still to talk about it.
So let's talk about when Chabad has gotten rather popular in the past 20 years. But I know it wasn't just 20 years ago. It took a long time before it became popularized. So address that issue.
First of all, I want to say that I can't really say it better than my wife. I could only hope to add some icing to the cake. But, she said it well. And you said it's funny that you point out the last 20 years. And the last 20 years has been since the physical passing of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So so to say, my wife says she's the engine of our Chabad house. The engine of Chabad, in a physical sense, is not physically here. But in our teachings in Judaism, which is true for the world, that the soul takes on even a greater presence. And we see exponentially how Chabad has grown since the early 90s.
But why is that?
Right. So why that is what my wife was pointing out was the teachings of Chabad. Chabad made, and those words, Chachma Bina Das, which literally stand for, again, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. But it made it that each one of us can internalize and have a personal relationship and eat with God, with our community, and that in the practical action, we all are spiritual in our hearts, but we also are looking for, in psychology, right, the idea that if I do something behaviorally, it also affects the way I feel internally. So I think the Lubavitcher Rebbe created, so to say, nothing. He didn't innovate anything from our tradition. He didn't take it out and create a new Judaism. But he said, here are some practical, very relevant ways to look at the world and to participate in the world that makes everybody an ambassador.
There are people that are watching this that think that everybody that goes to Chabad looks like you. Right? But that's not the case.
Thankfully, no.
We'll talk about that later. But there are plenty of people that go there that, even though that are not Orthodox, that go there because they like what's happening there. They like a certain type of relationship that's there. So, and when I asked a non-rabbi who looked like you, I said, why are there people like you and people like me that go there? He says, well, they expect it of me. He was an elder in that. And I said, but there are plenty of people that wear a yarmulke, and that's it. So tell us about your experience in different Chabads. How many people are truly observant in that group of people that are there, and as far as beards and clothing like this?
So I think all the questions you're asking really point to why people are actually more comfortable in coming to Chabad. Is, we said the word Orthodox and appearance, and really we say this idea that labels are for T-shirts, not for people. And I think it's the undercore teachings of Chabad that one person and one mitzvah, one connection, one action is infinitely valuable. And that's true for you, that's true for me, that's true for my wife, that's true for Rochelle, who's helping today. That each one of us has the ability to make a huge impact. So if I'm walking into a room where I really believe that my impact is as great as the guy next to me, what does it matter what I look like?
When I walk in and I see somebody that's dressed and like that, there's a certain comfort for me now. So I look and I go, here's the whole range. You can select wherever you want to be, all right? And there's plenty of examples, for all of that, or not at all. So originally I was exposed to Chabad and Kendall, Chabad of Kendall and Pinecrest and Kendall, and that's where actually my kids wound up going for a short time. And at one point, somebody said to me, it was right around Rosh Hashanah, he said, you're supposed to be here. And it just got me, all right? It was just like, wow. And it made me think a lot, all right, about what I thought. You can go, but it was really the bigger picture. Do you belong there? Do you want to be there? What is there to make that work? My children are very involved in Coconut Grove, Chabad, and there are Chabads all over Miami-Dade County and Broward. And we've been around long enough to realize there was a time 25 years ago, I don't think there were any here. Certainly not 30 years ago. So there's a certain popularity that people are finding comfort in that. So my hat's off to you and your wife and your children who are here.
Thank you.
And they'll get adjusted to it, we hope, all right? And there'll be smiles on their faces. So let's talk a little bit about Rosh Hashanah. You might want to do something over here, right? And Rosh Hashanah is coming up within a month. And tell us, if you will, this in the short version of the shofar and why we do things at Rosh Hashanah.
So you said two things there actually that just brought things together in my head. Actually, you mentioned our children, that they get adjusted with a smile. Thankfully, thank God, they've gotten pretty well adjusted. And my wife, all the things that she was intending, seeing the flow that when you're in a position of giving, that it actually raises the whole family and it raises them as well. And they're actually many times on the forefront in that, because a child, and this is how it relates to Rosh Hashanah as well, and I mentioned it before, you have one of the strongest traditions that we have is related and connected to Rosh Hashanah is the blowing the shofar. Now you would ask yourself, what does this simple horn have to do with anything in my life spiritually? It seems it's inanimate. At this point it was on an animal and now it's inanimate, and here I am, a grown man blowing a non-melodic instrument. But perhaps that is somewhat of what the external expression is of a deep inner childlike feeling, that it comes from the feeling, a child is very, very, and we see it with our children, and if we can remember ourselves as being a child, that there's this simplicity to life. There's a sense that every moment is precious, and that affects the most tangible thing in front of me, like something that my meal, the way I eat has meaning, the way I get dressed has meaning, the people I interact with every day, which before maybe I get into all the social media, it is a real true connection. And we do things externally, right? Like someone goes to the gym to build their internal health as well. So both things have a relationship with each other, and it kind of wakes us up a little bit, the shofar. And Rosh Hashanah gives us a chance to sit with ourselves, like my wife was saying, and reconnect to that inner self before we get out into the world in the year to come, and really infuse our unique note in creation we each have when we play our instruments, each individual instrument, so to say.
Okay, so you ready to show us?
Yeah.
thank you for doing that.
We should have a sweet year and all see that how we're all really connected. That's really what the underlying message is.
And we have 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
And one of the great things I've learned with Judaism is to enjoy. It seems like there's a holiday every month or so, and there's a lot of food connected to that. And you are a wonderful chef, by the way.
Thank you.
So I've had some of your food recently. It was really top. And certainly that's part of that camaraderie that pulls the families together and that opening of those doors. And we see that, especially here in Miami-Dade County. Was with somebody the other day, was at the show. And after the show, he asked if I was Jewish. And my answer was, Farrah, come over, Susan, come over. Then there was a conversation, and there were 4 Jewish people standing there talking about that connection, not about Judaism, but about there was this underlying connection that was there that made it a whole lot simpler. All the walls seemed to like sort of disappear. So there's that connection that people can find at your Chabad house, and it's called Southwest.
Chabad of Southwest Miami.
Chabad of Southwest Miami. We have your web address. People, it's on the screen right now. People can go there, and there's some contact phone numbers. And so we're going to wrap it up. But before we do that, I know we'll start with you. There are people that have made a huge difference in your life. Maybe they're with us, maybe they're not. What I'd like you to do is look into the blue camera, and she's going to film up. There you go. You're going to look right in the camera and talk to them, whether they're here or not.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you for your support, your encouragement, for your guidance, and for believing in me. And yeah, we're all in this together.
Okay, Rabbi, the closer you get to the truth, the better this is going to be. Who would you like to thank for helping guide you to where you and your family are today, whether they're here or not? And just look right in the camera.
Well, first, of course, I have to start with my wife. That goes without saying. When 2 people get married, and in my situation, for sure, I felt that the other part of my soul has been complete, and the journey together continues, and that's the greatest deal of gratitude I owe. I do thank the Lubavitcher Rebbe, whose vision of what we can do, each one of us, and see that impact on the world is indispensable. My grandparents and my parents, I love you. Thank you so much. You guys are incredible. My siblings, my whole extended family, and friends over the years. And I know this sounds maybe cliche, but everybody I've met in my life, Rabbi Felag now, who's here, and who has really built on our journey together. And we all completed. Mr. Miller is taking us to this next step, and really every moment is really one of an opportunity to share and connect. And there was also, if I could go off a second here, that the Rebbe would encourage, he would often give dollars to people. When 2 people would meet, he would give $1, and that a third person would benefit right away. So I think that hopefully that our impact together, although obviously the words we say are good, we're going to continue with something practical again, that somebody could benefit, and we're going to give this here, that somebody else could take it on to us. And this is something we could all do every day. You know, we give in our own way, whether it's food, whether it's money, whether it's our time, whether it's our ears, and that's it, and that's what we should do.
All right.
You could do the final hammer blow.
Well, I had one too.
No,
I was trying to get that in there. I'll bet if it was the $100 bill, I'd get in there faster.
That's okay.
Rabbi, thank you so much for being here. Or thank you very much for what you do for the community and for your family. And I'm glad to see that you opened up on this. Listen, we're going to, folks, thank you for joining us. And remember, take care of yourselves and your family. Have a good day.